June 6, 1944, D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in human history, was about to begin, as over 150,000 Allied troops prepared to storm the beaches of Nazi-occupied France. Among these brave men was Sergeant Thomas Mitchell, a carpenter from Portland, Maine, whose journey would take him from the peaceful coastal towns of New England to the blood-soaked sands of Omaha Beach, where he would make the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. Before the olive-drab uniform, before the sergeant's stripes, before war claimed him in the surf of Normandy, Thomas Mitchell was simply Tom to those who knew him best, a gentle giant with calloused hands and an infinite capacity for patience. Born in 1918 to a lobsterman and a seamstress, Tom grew up in the tight-knit community of Cape Elizabeth, where the rhythm of life was set by the tides and the changing seasons. The Mitchell family lived in a small white clapboard house overlooking Casco Bay, where young Tom would spend hours watching the fishing boats come and go, dreaming of the adventures that lay beyond the horizon. His father, Robert Mitchell, had served briefly in World War I, but returned home with little desire to discuss his experiences. Instead, he channeled his energy into providing for his family, working the cold waters of the North Atlantic with the same quiet determination he would pass on to his son. Tom's childhood was marked by the simple pleasures of coastal Maine life, clamming at low tide, building elaborate sand castles with his younger sister Margaret, helping his father repair lobster traps in the garage that doubled as a workshop. It was here, surrounded by the smell of pine shavings and the sound of his father's patient instruction, that Tom developed both his love of working with wood and his meticulous attention to detail. By his teenage years, Tom had grown into a strapping young man with gentle brown eyes and a natural gift for craftsmanship. He could shape wood into beautiful, functional objects with an artistry that amazed his teachers and neighbors. His high school shop teacher often said that Tom could make a piece of driftwood sing, and local residents began commissioning him for small furniture projects and repairs. It was at a church social in the summer of 1938 that Tom met Helen Murphy, a spirited young woman who had recently moved to Portland from Boston to work as a secretary at the shipyard. Helen was drawn to Tom's quiet confidence and genuine kindness, while he was captivated by her quick wit and the way she could make him laugh even after the longest, most frustrating day. Their courtship unfolded against the backdrop of a world sliding toward war. While other young couples danced to swing music and attended movies, Tom and Helen often spent their evenings walking along the rocky coast, talking about their dreams for the future. Tom spoke of opening his own carpentry shop, of building furniture that would last for generations. Helen shared her hopes of teaching children, of creating a warm home filled with love and laughter. They married in June 1940, just as the German Blitzkrieg was overrunning France, and Britain stood alone against Nazi tyranny. Their wedding was a modest affair held in the same white-steepled church where they had first met, with reception dinner prepared by church ladies and dancing to a local band in the parish hall. Tom had built their wedding gifts himself, a beautiful hope chest for Helen, and matching bedside tables that would grace their first apartment. Their happiness was complete when their son, Robert Thomas Mitchell, was born in March 1941. Little Bobby, as he was known to family and friends, inherited his father's gentle nature and his mother's bright curiosity. Tom would spend hours with his infant son singing Maine sea shanties in his deep baritone voice, reading from picture books, even though Bobby was too young to understand, building elaborate block towers that the baby would knock down with delighted squeals. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor, the attack that brought America into World War II and transformed millions of lives in an instant. For the Mitchell family, as for countless others across the nation, this date marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. far more uncertain one. Tom's initial reaction was complex. His father's reticence about his own war experience had instilled in Tom a healthy skepticism about military service, but the attack on Pearl Harbor and the subsequent declaration of war stirred something deeper, a sense of duty that transcended personal preferences. For several months, he wrestled with the decision, torn between his responsibilities to his young family and his growing conviction that the fight against fascism required his participation. The decision came in April 1942, when Helen found him in his workshop late one evening, staring at a half-finished rocking chair he was building for Bobby. "I have to go," he said simply, without looking up from his work. "I can't stay home building furniture while other men fight for our freedom. What kind of world would we be leaving for Bobby if we let Hitler win?" Helen had been expecting this moment for months, dreading it but understanding its inevitability. She simply nodded and moved to stand behind him, placing her hands on his broad shoulders. "I know," she whispered. "I've known since Pearl Harbor. I just hoped, but I know you have to go." Sergeant Thomas Mitchell completed his training at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where his carpentry skills and natural leadership abilities quickly earned him promotion and assignment to the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. His letters home during training revealed a man adapting to military life while maintaining strong connections to his family and his craft. He wrote detailed descriptions of the wooden structures he helped build around the base, always thinking like a craftsman, even while learning to be a soldier. By early 1944, Tom was in England, preparing for the invasion that everyone knew was coming but no one could discuss openly. His letters during this period show growing awareness of the magnitude of what lay ahead, balanced by his characteristic determination to do his duty regardless of personal cost. He wrote frequently to Helen about their son, asking for details about Bobby's development, sharing his hopes and dreams for the boy's future. In one particularly poignant letter written in May 1944, Tom described a rocking horse he was carving for Bobby during his off-duty hours, using techniques his father had taught him and tools borrowed from British craftsmen. "I want him to have something made by his daddy's hands," he wrote. "Something he can keep forever, something that will remind him that his father loved him more than life itself." As D-Day approached, the tension among the invasion forces became palpable. Tom's unit was assigned to the first wave of the assault on Omaha Beach, one of the most heavily defended sections of the Normandy coast. Intelligence reports suggested that German defenses were lighter than anticipated, but the veterans among them harbored serious doubts about the optimistic assessments. On the evening of June 5th, as the invasion fleet gathered in the choppy waters of the English Channel, Tom found time to write what would be his final letter to Helen and Bobby. Using a field desk in the cramped quarters of his transport ship, surrounded by seasick soldiers and the constant noise of engines and equipment, he began what he surely hoped would be just another in their ongoing correspondence. The next morning, June 6, 1944, began before dawn with the sound of naval bombardment and aircraft engines. Tom's landing craft approached Omaha Beach through rough seas and heavy German fire. Military records indicate that his boat was among the first to reach the beach, where German machine guns and artillery had created a killing field in the surf and sand. Witnesses reported that Sergeant Mitchell led his squad off the landing craft with characteristic calm, organizing his men and directing them toward whatever cover they could find on the exposed beach. He was hit by machine gun fire while attempting to rescue wounded soldiers who had fallen in the shallow water, continuing to drag men to safety, even after being mortally wounded himself. Tom's body was recovered later that day during the consolidation of the beachhead, along with his personal effects, which included the letter he had written the night before. This letter, eventually delivered to Helen, along with official notification of his death, provides an extraordinary window into the mind of a father and husband facing the greatest test of his life while holding fast to the love that gave his sacrifice meaning. Before we share Sergeant Mitchell's final words to his family, I ask that you take a moment to like this video. Your support helps us continue telling these essential stories of sacrifice and love, ensuring that the experiences of those who stormed the beaches of Normandy are never forgotten by future generations. What follows are the words of Sergeant Thomas Mitchell in his final letter to his son and wife, words written with the sound of enemy guns in the distance and the knowledge that dawn would bring the greatest test of his generation.
June 5th, 1944. Aboard HMS Empire Javelin, English Channel. My dearest Helen and my precious Bobby. Tomorrow morning, we go ashore in France. And tonight feels like the most important night of my life. Not because of what we'll face on the beach, but because it might be my last chance to tell you both how much you mean to me. The chaplain held services this evening, and afterwards I found myself thinking not about the battle ahead, but about that Sunday morning last spring when Bobby took his first real steps across our kitchen floor, straight into my arms. I'm writing this letter in the dim light of the ship's compartment, surrounded by other men who are probably thinking the same thoughts I am, about home, about the people we love, about the reasons we're here instead of safe in our own beds. Some of the boys are barely older than Bobby will be when he starts school, and it breaks my heart to think of them so far from their mothers and sweethearts. Helen, my darling wife, I need you to know that every day since we married has been a gift beyond measure. You took a simple carpenter from Maine and made him feel like the luckiest man alive. You've given me a son who is more beautiful and perfect than anything I could have imagined. And you've created a home that I carry with me everywhere I go. When I close my eyes here on this cold ship, I can smell the blueberry muffins you bake on Sunday mornings. I can hear you humming while you work in the garden. I can feel the warmth of your hand in mine as we watch the sunset from our front porch. I had to stop writing for a while. Final briefing and equipment check. We've been told what to expect tomorrow, and I won't lie to you, Helen. It's going to be dangerous. The Germans have had 4 years to prepare these defenses, and they won't give up easily. But our cause is just, and we have good men leading us. I believe we'll succeed, though I know the cost will be high. Bobby, my precious boy, you're only 3 years old, so you won't understand these words for many years. By the time you're old enough to read this letter, you might not even remember your daddy clearly. But I want you to know some things about the man you came from, the love that brought you into this world, and the hopes and dreams I carry for your future. You are the most wonderful thing I have ever helped create, son. From the moment you drew your first breath, you changed everything about how I see the world. Suddenly, everything mattered more, because it mattered to you. The furniture I build had to be stronger because little boys would climb on it. The stories I tell had to be better because your bright eyes were watching me. The man I am had to be worthy of being called Daddy by someone as perfect as you. I've been working on something special for you, Bobby. A rocking horse carved from good Maine oak, with a flowing mane and kind eyes. I've been carving it during my spare time here in England, thinking about Christmas mornings when you'll ride it across our living room floor, pretending to be a cowboy or a knight or whatever heroes capture your imagination. The horse isn't finished yet, but I've asked Sergeant Murphy to make sure it gets to you if something happens to me. He's a good man from Boston who has a little boy about your age. and he understands what it means to leave something behind for your children. But more than any toy or gift, Bobby, I want to leave you with knowledge of who your father was and what he believed. I want you to know that I was a man who tried to do right by his family and his country, who worked with his hands to build things that would last, who believed that every person deserves to be free and safe and loved. I want you to know that I went to war not because I loved fighting, but because I loved you and your mother too much to let evil men threaten the world you'll grow up in. Your grandfather, my father, taught me that a man's worth isn't measured by how much money he makes or how famous he becomes, but by how well he takes care of the people who depend on him. I've tried to live by that lesson, Bobby, and I hope you'll carry it forward in your own life. Take care of your mother. Take care of the family you'll create someday. Take care of your neighbors and your community. That's what real strength looks like. Not the ability to fight, but the willingness to protect. The sea is getting rougher, and some of the boys are having a hard time with seasickness. I've been thinking about our little house by the bay, about the workshop where I've spent so many happy hours building furniture for our home and for our neighbors. There's something magical about taking a piece of raw wood and shaping it into something beautiful and useful. Something that will serve a family for generations. I hope you'll learn to work with your hands, Bobby. Not because you have to follow in your father's footsteps, but because there's deep satisfaction in creating something lasting and good. Whether you become a carpenter or a teacher or a doctor or anything else, remember that honest work done with skill and care is always worthy of respect. The man who builds a strong table or repairs a broken chair is contributing something valuable to the world, something that makes other people's lives a little better. Helen, I need you to help our son understand these things as he grows up. Tell him about the projects we worked on together, about the way I always saved the wood shavings to use for kindling because nothing should be wasted, about how I would run my hand along a piece of finished wood to feel for imperfections that might need attention. These details might seem small, but they represent a way of approaching life with care, with attention, with respect for the materials and tools we're given. I can hear the naval bombardment beginning in the distance, our big guns trying to soften up the German defenses before we go ashore. In a few hours, when the sun comes up, we'll be wading through the surf toward whatever waits for us on that beach. I'm not afraid exactly, though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. What I feel most strongly is a sense of purpose, a knowledge that I'm exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what needs to be done. If I don't make it home, I want you both to know that every moment of my life has been worthwhile, because it led to loving you. Helen, you made me a better man than I ever thought I could be. Bobby, you made me understand what real love feels like. The kind that would sacrifice anything, endure anything, to protect what matters most. Promise me, both of you, that you'll live fully and joyfully, that you won't let grief become a prison. Promise me that you'll remember the good times we shared, the laughter that filled our little house, the love that made even ordinary moments feel special. Promise me that Bobby will grow up knowing he was wanted, cherished, and deeply loved by his father, even if I can't be there to tell him so in person. Helen, if the worst happens, don't close your heart to the possibility of love again. You're too young and too wonderful to spend the rest of your life alone. Find someone worthy of your remarkable spirit, someone who will be a good father to our boy, Someone who will honor the memory of what we shared while building something new and beautiful with you. That's not betrayal. That's the ultimate expression of love, ensuring that life and hope continue even after loss. Bobby, take care of your mother. Be kind to people. Work hard. Stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Remember that real courage isn't the absence of fear, but doing what needs to be done despite being afraid. Most importantly, remember that you are loved beyond measure, beyond distance, beyond even death itself. I must go now. The time for preparation is ending, and the time for action is at hand. Whatever happens on that beach tomorrow, know that I carry you both with me always. In my heart, in my thoughts, in my prayers for the future that awaits when this terrible war finally ends. Until we meet again, whether in our little house by the bay or in whatever comes after this life, your devoted husband and father, Tom. P.S. I'm enclosing a small piece of Maine driftwood that I've been carrying since I left home. It's smooth from years of ocean waves, polished by time and salt water into something beautiful. Keep it as a reminder that even the roughest storms eventually end. That time can heal even the deepest wounds, and that something good can emerge from even the most difficult circumstances.
Sergeant Thomas Mitchell never returned to his workshop in Maine. He died on Omaha Beach during the first hour of the D-Day invasion, part of the terrible cost exacted by Hitler's Atlantic Wall. He was 26 years old with a 3-year-old son who would have only the vaguest memories of his father, and a widow who would treasure his final letter for the rest of her life. The D-Day invasion succeeded, but at enormous cost. On Omaha Beach alone, over 2,400 American casualties were suffered on June 6th, with entire units decimated by German defensive fire. Yet their sacrifice was not in vain. The successful establishment of the Normandy beachhead marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany, opening the long-awaited Second Front that would lead to victory in Europe less than a year later. Helen Mitchell received official notification of her husband's death on June 15, 1944, followed 3 weeks later by his personal effects and the letter he had written aboard the invasion transport. She kept the letter private for many years, sharing its contents only with Bobby as he grew old enough to understand its significance. In 1994, on the 50th anniversary of D-Day, she donated it to the National World War II Museum, believing that Tom's words deserved to be preserved as part of the historical record. The impact of D-Day extended far beyond the immediate military success. It represented the largest coordinated effort in human history, requiring unprecedented cooperation between allied nations and services. More importantly, it marked the moment when the tide of World War II turned decisively against fascism, setting in motion the chain of events that would restore freedom to Western Europe. For individual families like the Mitchells, these grand historical narratives mattered less than the personal cost of victory. Helen raised Bobby as a single mother, working as a secretary at the Portland shipyard while attending night school to become a teacher. She never remarried, though she maintained in later interviews that this wasn't from inability to love again, but from a sense that her life's purpose lay in honoring Tom's memory through their son. Bobby grew up with his father's letter and the unfinished rocking horse that Sergeant Murphy faithfully delivered after the war. He became a skilled carpenter like his father, eventually opening the woodworking shop that Tom had dreamed of establishing. The business, Mitchell and Son Fine Furniture, operated successfully for over 4 decades, creating pieces that bore the same attention to detail and quality craftsmanship that had characterized Tom's work. D-Day has been thoroughly analyzed by historians. its tactical and strategic dimensions exhaustively documented. We know the landing schedules, the casualty figures, the equipment specifications, but these clinical details tell us little about the human experience of that terrible day. The fear, courage, sacrifice, and love that motivated ordinary men to attempt something extraordinary. Sergeant Mitchell's letter offers us such a window, not just into one father's final thoughts, but into the universal human experience of loving so deeply that even death cannot diminish that connection. His words transcend the specific circumstances of D-Day, speaking to timeless truths about family, sacrifice, and the values worth fighting to preserve. What wisdom might we glean from Tom's final communication? What insights does his interrupted life offer those of us living in more peaceful times? Perhaps the first lesson concerns the nature of true strength. Notice how Tom defined courage not as the absence of fear, but as doing what needs to be done despite being afraid. He understood that real bravery isn't about feeling fearless, but about acting rightly despite our fears. This perspective offers a more accessible and authentic model of courage than the Hollywood heroics we often associate with warfare. Tom's letter also reveals profound insights about the relationship between work and meaning. His carpentry wasn't just a job, but a form of expression, a way of contributing something lasting and beautiful to the world. There's something magical about taking a piece of raw wood and shaping it into something beautiful and useful, he wrote. In our era of often abstract and disconnected work, his words remind us of the deep satisfaction that comes from creating something tangible and enduring. There is also, in Tom's words, a remarkable understanding of love's true nature. His advice to Helen about potentially remarrying, that's not betrayal, that's the ultimate expression of love, reveals someone who understood that genuine love seeks the beloved's happiness even at the cost of one's own preferences. This mature perspective on love challenges our culture's often possessive and jealous notions of romantic relationships. Perhaps most striking is Tom's reflection on what constitutes a meaningful legacy. Rather than focusing on professional achievements or material success, he emphasized values, honesty, craftsmanship, care for others, protection of the vulnerable. A man's worth isn't measured by how much money he makes or how famous he becomes, he quoted his father as saying, but by how well he takes care of the people who depend on him. His letter to Bobby deserves particular attention as a masterclass in fatherly wisdom. Despite his son's young age, Tom treated him as a person worthy of respect and explanation. He shared his values, his hopes, his understanding of what it means to be a good man. This approach suggests that meaningful parenting isn't just about providing for children's immediate needs, but about preparing them for the moral and ethical challenges they'll face as adults. World War II cost over 400,000 American lives, including thousands who died on the beaches of Normandy. Behind each statistic was a person like Tom Mitchell, someone with deep family connections, professional skills, and dreams for the future that would never be realized. Yet their sacrifice was not meaningless. The freedom they died defending allowed democracy to survive its greatest test and provided the foundation for the post-war world order. Helen Mitchell understood this truth profoundly. In addition to raising Bobby and pursuing her teaching career, she became active in veterans organizations and Gold Star families groups. She understood that Tom's sacrifice required her to contribute to the causes he had died for: freedom, democracy, and the protection of future generations. When Bobby reached adulthood and wanted to enlist during the Vietnam conflict, Helen struggled with conflicting emotions. Her experience as a war widow made her deeply reluctant to risk losing her son as she had lost her husband. Yet she also understood that each generation must decide for itself what principles are worth defending. Bobby ultimately served honorably in the Navy, continuing his family's tradition of service while pursuing the woodworking career his father had dreamed of. The beaches of Normandy are peaceful now, marked by monuments and cemeteries honoring those who fell during the invasion. The American cemetery at Colville-sur-Mer contains the graves of over 9,000 servicemen, including many who died on D-Day. Visitors often remark on the site's serenity, how difficult it is to imagine the desperate struggle that occurred there. Yet beneath that peaceful surface lies the legacy of men like Tom Mitchell, who gave their lives for principles they believed transcended personal interest. In our current era, when the sacrifices of World War II seem distant and the threats they faced appear abstract, Tom's letter reminds us that freedom is not free. It requires each generation to decide what values are worth preserving, what principles are worth defending, and what price they're willing to pay to maintain them. The workshop that Tom dreamed of opening became reality through his son's efforts. But its true significance lies in what it represents: the continuity of values across generations, the transformation of sacrifice into something constructive and beautiful, the triumph of creation over destruction. Every piece of furniture that bore the Mitchell name carried forward Tom's commitment to craftsmanship, quality, and service to others. As we conclude this journey through one family's encounter with history's greatest conflict, we might reflect on the continuing relevance of the values Tom died defending: the freedom of thought, the right to live without fear, the opportunity to build something meaningful with our lives. These remain precious gifts that each generation must be willing to protect. Sergeant Mitchell's letter, written in the cramped quarters of an invasion transport over 80 years ago, offers us perspective both sobering and inspiring. Life is precious and fragile. Love is powerful and enduring. And sometimes ordinary people are called to do extraordinary things. Yet within these challenging truths lies hope, that individual sacrifices can shape history, that love can transcend even death, and that the values we defend and the work we do can outlast our brief time on Earth. As Tom wrote to his family from that distant ship, something good can emerge from even the most difficult circumstances. In our own uncertain times, perhaps there is no more essential truth than this: that what we create through authentic love and genuine commitment continues long after we're gone, carried forward by those whose lives we've touched, preserved in the institutions we've defended, and embodied in the values we've chosen to live by. The carpenter from Maine who built furniture to last for generations found his ultimate purpose on a French beach, defending principles he believed were worth dying for. His interrupted life reminds us that heroism isn't about the absence of fear, but about the decision to act courageously despite it, that love isn't about duration, but about depth, and that meaning isn't found in longevity, but in the quality of our commitment to something greater than ourselves. If this story has moved you, if it has helped you understand the human dimension of D-Day and the price of the freedom we enjoy today, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support enables us to continue honoring these stories of sacrifice, courage, and enduring love, ensuring that the experiences of those who stormed the beaches of Normandy remain alive in our collective memory, not as distant history, but as vital inspiration for our own times of challenge and choice.